Hi, it's Dr. Brian McDonough, and welcome to the Dr. Brian McDonough Show. Today, I have a very special guest, author Mark Jacobs. But assisting me in interviewing Mark Jacobs will be Thomas O'Donnell. He'll be conducting most of the interview with Mark. Now, let me give you a background on Mark. Mark has written a book called Quirky Heart of Ted the Grocer. But what's interesting is Mark Jacobs' background is as a CIO. Basically, he's a tech guy talking about the wonderful world of the past. That's all by way of intro. I'm going to introduce Mark Jacobs and Thomas O'Donnell right after this on the Dr. Brian McDonough Show.
So, reading through the book, there were a lot of parts of it I actually really enjoyed. And I personally find a lot of parallels to healthcare and also to family medicine. But I was curious, out of the book as a whole, is there a favorite part to this story that you especially enjoyed writing or wanted your audience to enjoy reading in particular?
Well, the book is broken down into little vignettes to sort of caption the moments in time. But one in particular is about my Uncle Ted in the 60s, and obviously he was a smoker, and he rarely went to the doctors. And talking about the focus around wellness, he never really he went to the doctors, but then when the doctor gave him pills for his high blood pressure, he would take one and start to feel better, and then throw it into a Cooper cheese box. It's a wooden box in the back of the store. And this went on, and over time, he must have had hundreds of pill boxes. It's a situation where, if he had taken care of himself a little bit more, he might have lived a lot longer than he actually did.
Yeah, well, I have to admit, I do find it very interesting how he was this cornerstone of the community. And I think for a lot of physicians who get into family medicine or primary care, the goal or the idea we have as we're getting into it is we're kind of going to be that cornerstone. And from reading the book, it seems like your Uncle Ted really was that for his community. And I think in the healthcare industry, at least, a lot of us kind of lose that along the way as things become more electronic. And from reading this, at least personally, I felt like I regained something that I had lost previously from when I got into this. And it kind of brought me back to that same mindset of being that cornerstone, being that spot where people come and they can tell you stories and they can just be themselves. And it doesn't always have to be about business.
It's funny. It's funny, Thomas, you mentioned about that, because a lot of people have told me about that when they read the book. It sort of brought them back to a number of time, and it helped them in their current lives. But it's about the power of the community. It's about authenticity and individuality. It's about resilience in the face of change, and obviously humor and humility in everyday lives.
So when you were writing the book, was there a certain part of it that you found most challenging to write, or a part that was just difficult to try and put into words?
Well, the challenge I had, because I grew up in a family of 9 siblings, and everybody in the family, all my brothers and sisters, uh, spent a lot of time at my Uncle Ted's store, and we spent a lot of time with him. The most challenging one was to make the book entertaining and funny and easy to read, but at the same time respect my other family members, because they remember it so differently. But my Uncle Ted had some quirky habits, and he had some quirky stories that you question. Did he really want to run a story, or did he really want to do other things in life than just be at a store and take care of sales and selling cans of beans?
And I guess speaking about him and his quirky nature in particular here, I don't want to give away too much of the book, or at least in the first few chapters, but you did mention some parts that he was one of the first people drafted into the war in World War II, and that he came back home and he kind of used his GI Bill to invest in starting this local grocery store. Um, how is it you feel that these struggles that he went through in that transition might have affected him or shaped the way that he ran his business when he came back?
Well, a number of things. Michael Tidd saw some action during World War II. He went in the day after Normandy, when they stormed the beaches of Normandy. So he had some funny things that happened to him, but he also saw some horrors that he was fighting with demons on his own. So he liked to be around people, and I think what he did is, as he transitioned into the grocery business and had different customers come, he developed a relationship with him, similar to what he did when he was in the war and he had his army buddies. So I think that was one of many things that put him apart from others. Um, some of the stories, if you read through the book, they're sort of different, including the story about he went through the cleanup of right after the Hindenburg disaster. He brought back some memorabilia from the war that probably he shouldn't have had. And then when different times came along, like the McCarthy hearings, he did a lot to be able to get rid of some of that stuff.
So speaking about those items in particular, then you list numerous items in his store that almost every nook and cranny was filled with something. Was there any item in particular that stood out to you when you were younger? And what is it you think that particular item said about your Uncle Ted?
Well, it was a small grocery store, so obviously he had more stuff to store away in terms of memorabilia. So he had to figure out places to store it. So obviously, when we were kids, we used to spend a lot of time with him. And the reality is, you saw some of this stuff. One in particular was when he was in Germany. He was in the day after they stormed the beaches of Normandy. He brought back a German Nazi parachute, and those were kind of strange things. It was a silk parachute that he had for years, and he kept this for some type of a memory that he had. I guess he thought it was going to be worth money someday, but he had this, and how he got rid of it eventually, he pretty much burned it because he thought that the government was going to come after him because he had this contraband.
Knowing your background, I guess I'm kind of curious, what parallels is it you see between both your Uncle Ted and his grocery store and then the current state of healthcare and how it was in the past?
Well, most of your readers and most of your audience, obviously, everybody likes technology. My career was all around putting technology together, electronic health records and things like that. And so the biggest part of that was my Uncle Ted was pretty innovative, but he loved technology. For example, he used to have a very complex series of switches on the back. So if a customer came in the front door, a bell would go off and it would notify him whether he was in the basement or out back. But he didn't just put in technology to put in technology. He put in technology to improve his workflow so he could not only do what he did day to day in a store, but things he might have wanted to do and enjoy when he had a brief period of rest. So he was that technology kind of guy, but he didn't just apply technology for the sake of applying it. And I think you could say the same thing about healthcare. The key to technology is leveraging it for providers to be able to increase their workflow, to be able to make things efficient, so they could provide more care for more patients.
Mark, what do you see the future of telehealth, AI, and how healthcare will change from your perspective after years of working in it? And the reason I say that is, here you wrote a book about the old world, recognizing the value of that. And now you're in a situation where we have a new world, which could totally put everything on its ear. What do you think is going to happen? And what do you see as strengths and weaknesses?
Well, when I wrote this book, I tried to think of all the different age groups because I wanted to appeal to not only folks that were in that 50 to 70 year old range, and then I wanted to bring it into a world where it was between the 30 and 45 range, and at the same time appeal to Gen Z. and Gen X. So, but I think the future of where things are moving and evolving to, you can't, I mean, it's there's a lot of areas that you recognize where you can't find providers. I hear every single day that there's constant shortages of providers, primary care specialists, you can't get them. And technology is an easier way to be able to reach out and do more, and also do more to assist the patient in ways that they may not need to go to the doctor. They just might need help in terms of guidance or a diagnosis or something for some concern of their health.
And my final question, which I love asking, is there anything that Thomas didn't ask you or that I briefly didn't ask you that you wanted to bring up that you thought was important?
I invite the readers to go out and read the book, get the book. It's pretty entertaining.
Mark Jacobs, Thomas O'Donnell, I want to thank you both for joining us on the Dr. Brian McDonough Show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.